You ever come back to a place that used to be yours and realize it doesn't even recognize you anymore? That's what hit me that foggy morning when I pulled up to my old lake house, the one I built with my own hands 15 years ago, back when I thought peace could be bought in acres and quiet water. I'd been gone for a decade working on a long-term marine study up in Alaska, and I thought I'd finally earned my right to come home, sit on that dock again, and feel like I belonged. But before I even set foot on the boards, a woman's voice sliced through the mist, sharp, cold, and dripping with authority. "You abandoned this property, sir. It now belongs to the community." I turned, and there she was, Margaret Langford, the self-declared queen of the Lakeside Haven HOA, standing on my dock like she owned the horizon. White blazer clipboard designer shoes that had no business being near real wood. Behind her, 7 black SUVs lined up along the shore, red and blue lights flashing against the glassy water. It looked less like an HOA visit and more like a raid. I could have laughed if I wasn't so stunned. "You might want to check the county records before you start declaring ownership," I said, fishing my phone from my jacket pocket, trying to keep my tone light. She smirked the kind of smirk only someone born on third base ever manages. "I don't need to. We've already claimed it under abandonment law." That's when I showed her. "Yeah, see, that'd be a real problem for you if the new registration I just filed this morning wasn't already approved by the county land registrar." She frowned, pulled out her own phone, and I watched the color drain from her face as she scrolled. Her hands started to tremble. "That's impossible," she whispered. "The registrar's signature belongs to someone you've been harassing all week," I cut in. "My wife." She blinked like her whole world just tilted. And maybe it had, because 10 years ago I left this place under her radar. But my wife Rachel had been watching everything from inside the county office, quietly undoing every shady move Margaret and her cronies had tried to pull. Now, before I explain how a marine biologist ended up at war with an HOA, let me back up a bit. 10 years ago, I found this lake by accident while surveying wetland restoration sites. It was perfect 40 acres of clear, spring-fed water, surrounded by old cedar and pine. The previous owner, a widower named Harold Briggs, sold it cheap after his family fell apart. What he didn't realize was that his grandfather had written something called a conservation easement into the deed, basically a legal spell that kept the land from ever being commercially developed. That clause was my shield, my guarantee of peace. For 2 years, I lived here full-time documenting fish populations, cataloging plant recovery, feeling like I'd found heaven on Earth. Then came a once-in-a-lifetime research grant, a full decade in the Arctic studying ocean currents and ice migration. I left thinking everything was locked down tight. I paid property taxes in advance, hired a caretaker, even installed cloud-connected cameras. What I didn't know was that a power-hungry senator and his HOA royalty wife saw my absence as an open invitation. When I came back, my quiet lakefront cabin had turned into the Lakeside Grand Marina. Docks, fuel stations, race buoys, even a damn floating bar, flashing Langford Regatta nights. My research shed had been painted in their HOA colors, blue and silver. It looked like a theme park, not a sanctuary. Margaret's tone shifted when her brother-in-law showed up, a local deputy named Ben Langford, the kind of guy who polishes his badge more than he uses it. "Sir, I'll need you to step away from the dock," he said, puffing his chest. I didn't move. "Sure thing," I said, "right after you take a look at my federal conservation documents, this morning's deed registration, and the EPA's Environmental Protection Notice." That last part was a bluff, but the way his eyes darted told me it landed. Margaret snapped. "You can't just waltz in here and claim ownership after 10 years. We improved this property, maintained it, invested in it." "You mean turned it into a criminal carnival?" I said. "See those satellite dishes? That's illegal gambling. Those speedboats. They're racing over protected spawning grounds. Every one of those activities is a federal violation. The way she looked at me, you could see the mask slipping. She wasn't defending community property. She was defending her empire. Then came the cavalry, not hers, but mine. 2 sheriff cruisers rolled in, followed by a black SUV that didn't have any local insignia. When the door opened, I saw Eleanor Davis, my old neighbor. Retired teacher or so, she claimed. She stepped out in a neat blazer holding a banker's box. "Morning, Tom," she said. "I've got those recordings you asked about." Margaret froze. "What recordings?" Eleanor smiled. 36 conversations where you discuss bribes, money laundering, and threats to local officials. You should have waved at my porch cameras once in a while. Turns out my nosy neighbor was a retired FBI agent with nothing but time and a perfect view of the lake. That's when Rachel arrived. Calm, composed, professional. 10 years hadn't changed her eyes one bit, sharp as glass, steady as stone. She walked past Margaret, past the guards, straight to me. "Welcome home," she said softly. I didn't even have words. "You knew I finally asked." She nodded. "Since the day they filed their first fake transfer." Margaret tried one last push. "You can't prove anything." But Rachel just smiled, pulled a thick folder from her bag and said, "Actually, I can. Every fraudulent filing, every illegal transfer, every attempt to forge ownership, it's all here. You threatened my family. Margaret, you called my office, you mentioned my daughter by name. That's when this stopped being about property and became a criminal case." Right on cue. Margaret's phone rang. Her husband, Senator Langford, screaming through the speaker about frozen accounts and FBI raids. The irony was beautiful. The woman who claimed to own the lake couldn't even pay her lawyer anymore. Then the helicopters came, federal agents rappelling down, seizing evidence, arresting her in front of her entire entourage. I wish I could say I felt triumphant, but honestly, I just felt tired. 10 years gone and my sanctuary had been turned into a battlefield. But Rachel wasn't done. "There's more," she said. "They weren't just running gambling rings. They were smuggling goods under the lake using your old research cages as underwater storage." I stared at her, stunned. "You're telling me they used my conservation setup as a criminal warehouse?" She nodded. "And now it's evidence in a multi-state RICO case." As agents dove into the water, retrieving containers of drugs, weapons, and cash, it hit me how deep this thing went. The HOA wasn't just greedy, it was a front for organized crime. And somehow my wife and my neighbor had quietly dismantled it piece by piece while I was gone. Later, when the dust settled and Margaret was in handcuffs, Eleanor dropped one last twist. She was Rachel's biological mother. She'd been protecting her daughter from the sidelines for decades. It was wild, but somehow it made sense. Everything about this fight had been a family operation I didn't even realize I was part of. You'd think that would be the end of it, but life's never that tidy. A few hours after the arrests, armed boats started approaching from the far side of the lake. Federal fugitives trying to destroy the evidence. Gunfire cracked over the water, agents shouting, helicopters hovering low. It felt like a movie, except it was my dock, my home, my lake. When it was over, the criminals were caught and the federal government had seized everything the Langfords ever owned. Fast forward 6 months, and my old cabin's been transformed into the Knox Environmental Research Center. The lake, now renamed Cedar Ridge Preserve, is under permanent federal protection. The same water where they held illegal races is now a sanctuary for endangered fish species. Rachel runs the legal division for environmental enforcement. Eleanor teaches federal law interns how to spot fraud before it spreads. And me, I'm back in the field studying what I love most, how nature heals after human greed tries to ruin it. Some mornings I sit on that same dock with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise over the clean water. The same boards creak beneath my feet, but they sound different now, like they remember what happened here. Sometimes the past doesn't just haunt a place, it builds its backbone. I think about Margaret sometimes not out of anger, but out of curiosity. How does someone get so convinced they can rewrite the world around them? Maybe it's greed, maybe it's power, or maybe it's fear of losing control. Whatever it is, she taught me something I didn't expect, that even corruption can create clarity if you survive long enough to see it crumble. So yeah, I came home to a war zone, but I left with something better than peace. I left with proof that no one, not even the rich and powerful, gets to steal what's built with love and patience. Now I'm curious what you think. If someone tried to take your land, your peace, your life's work, would you fight back the same way? Or would you walk away and let the world sort itself out? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what justice means to you. And if you've got your own HOA horror story, I want to hear it. Because sometimes the quietest lakes hide the loudest truths.